Good evening, everybody, and welcome to East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting of the 14th of September 2021. The East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public and may be publicly shared by Council. During the meeting, any members of the public who are addressing the Council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record council meetings unless approval has been granted by the chair. In line with the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are able to attend council meetings electronically or in person, and the meetings will be open to the public via live streaming. Members of the public are invited to view the live streamed council meeting by following the link on council's website or Facebook page. If council encounters technical difficulties with the live streaming during the meeting, we will adjourn until the issue is resolved. If technical issues can't be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time or date. East Gippsland Shire Council acknowledges the Gunai-Kurnai, Monero and the Bidawal people as the traditional custodians of this land that encompasses East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional custodians have cared for and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council values their living culture and practices their right to self-determination. Council pays respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and future. So this evening we are all here in the council chamber, which is very pleasant being face to face, other than Councillor Buckley, who is in Benambra. So I'm just going to read this out and make sure that Councillor Buckley is well connected to us. A councillor's attendance can only be recorded as present at a council meeting when the councillor can confirm that they meet all of these criteria. They can hear proceedings, they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members, and they can be heard when they speak. I'll now confirm with Councillor Buckley. Can you see us and hear us, Councillor Buckley?
Yes, I can, Madam Mayor.
And can you confirm that the location that you're participating from is secure to ensure that the confidential items can be dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, it is, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Item 1.2 on the agenda is for apologies. And do we have any apologies this evening, Mr. CEO?
None are received, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 1.3 is for declaration of conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any declarations this evening? I see none.
Mayor, if I may, I have a conflict at item 7.1. It's about the CEO remuneration review, and I will declare at that time and leave the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. We'll record that. Item 1.4 is for the confirmation of the minutes. So that's for the minutes held on Tuesday the 24th of August, be confirmed. Councillors, do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor White. Thank you, Councillor Reeves, seconding the motion. Is the motion opposed? I put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, the motion is carried. The next meeting will be on Tuesday the 5th of October 2021 to be held at the Corporate Centre, 273 Main Street, Bensdale, commencing at 6 p.m. Item 1.6 is for requests of leave of absence. Mr. CEO, do we have any requests?
None have been received, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 1.7 is for open forum. Do we have any petitions or questions or public submissions, Mr. CEO?
Mayor, we do not have any petitions or questions of council. We do have a request to speak from Mr. Richard Hoxley in regards to item 3.1. And he will speak before that item. Thank
you, Mr. CEO. Item 2 is for notices of motion. Have we received any notices of motion?
None have been received, Mayor.
Thank you. And deferred business?
Yes, there is one.
Yep.
Sorry,
Good.
yes, there is one item of deferred business.
So this is for item 3.1, and we have Mr. Hoxley on the line. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Hoxley.
Hello,
Hi, you can hear us all right?
I can, thank you, yes.
Very good, thank you. So I'd invite you to speak, Mr. Hoxley. So we will allow 5 minutes to speak on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the opportunity to speak again tonight to this matter. It's in respect to, yes. I can, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Richard.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you again this evening on this matter for the proposed subdivision at 100 Kings Cove Boulevard in Meetung. Since the last meeting, we've undertaken some, albeit limited, discussions with members of the planning department with the view to try and reach some kind of agreed position. It's fair to say that we've had some positive discussions around issues surrounding fire services and also to that of vehicle access to each of the lots, which I understand to have been one of the issues or concerns regarding neighbourhood character. There weren't any other issues raised in the discussions with council officers on neighbourhood character, so we were somewhat surprised to again see the same grounds listed for refusal this evening for consideration by council, which is somewhat disappointing. But nonetheless, there's the opportunity here for council to consider the matter. As previously stated, we do disagree with the officers' concerns in relation to neighbourhood character. Kings Cove has been developed over a period of many years now and includes a diversity of lot sizes and throughout the estate, providing for quite a diversity in the housing choice, but also in creating what could be considered a diverse neighbourhood character in terms of subdivision patterns. So what we're proposing is, again, consistent with what already exists and will offer that diversity and makes good use of serviced available residential land. Again, there have not been any objections to the proposal from the community, which is also, we believe, another indication that the application is in keeping with the character of Kings Cove. There can be no more positive endorsement in many respects than the community's acceptance of it, given the involvement by the community in the planning process. So I call on council to support this application, but if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoxley. Councillors, are there any questions of Mr. Hoxley? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoxley. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I'll now pass over to Mr. Wayne to present the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you are two reports regarding plan and permit application 156-2021 for a 12-lot subdivision at 100 Kings Cove Boulevard, Meetung, where the officer recommendation remains to issue a notice of decision to refuse the planning permit application based on the subdivision being inconsistent with the requirements and objectives of the East Gippsland Planning Scheme and the Planning Policy Framework. Based on a resolution of Council on the 24th of August, further consideration has been given to an alternative motion at the request of councillors. It remains the officer recommendation that the land is appropriately serviced by the creation of a roadway. This would resolve other concerns relating to the design of neighbourhood character, including lot size. Also present online this evening are Mr. Robert Pringle, Council's Statutory Planning Coordinator, and Mr. Martin Richardson, Council's Manager of Planning, to answer any technical questions. The report is presented for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Wayne. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? If there are no questions, then there is an officer's recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion? Councillor Reeves?
Yes,
What-
I'm happy to move the motion
Thank you.
as presented.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Reeves, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Councillors, never before since the gold rush has there been an exodus from Melbourne to regional Victoria like we're seeing now. And do you know why? Because of the qualities of regional Victoria that are absolutely represented by East Gippsland and in particular the Gippsland Lakes and the developments around Meetung. The quality, the natural environment, the built environment, which is what we're talking about here, and the social environment represent the absolute pinnacle, councillors, in our region. The services provided by East Gippsland Shire are second to none, and Meetung, to me, councillors, represents the jewel in the crown in our area. The opportunities ahead for development and continuous development of Meetung are in our hands, and to keep it at that absolute quality. This is a premium product out here. This is not social housing, I'm afraid, councillors. This is top of the range. It's more than residential. This is a lifestyle. And councillors, to me, the planned or the proposal that puts battle axe blocks in Meetung and in Kings Cove is an absolute anathema to that particular area. The character of the neighbourhood is top of the range, and battle axe blocks don't represent that from my perspective. This development needs to have a planned road through the middle that'll join up to the ongoing development in the southwest of this particular area. And councillors, I urge you to support me with the officer's recommendation to refuse this on that basis.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Greason, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the officer's concerns about this proposed development, mainly because I think that it's not necessary to have battle axe blocks developed here. It's likely in the near future, with development southwest and west of this site, that a road will be built anyway below these houses. So I think there's not a good reason for the battle axe block, so I don't support it on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Is the motion opposed?
Mayor, I oppose the motion, and I'd like to flag an alternate motion, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stowe. So we'll continue debating the current motion. So you're opposed to the motion, you wish to speak?
No, I'll wait till I propose the other motion, thank you, but certainly opposed to it.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Does anybody else wish to speak for the motion? Do you wish to reconsider?
Sorry, Mayor, I was just giving Councillor Stowe some advice about whether he wanted to speak against
Sure.
the motion, given what he's got ahead of him. Sorry about that.
Well, perhaps I will.
All right, thanks, Councillor Stowe. Go ahead.
Seeing as you've been so kind to us.
Okay.
All right. Let me say that, in my view, this development should go ahead. This is a low-density development with lot sizes ranging from 2,000 to 6,000 square metres. These blocks are quite common in the area. Now, 2,000 to 6,000 metres, I accept what Councillor Mark said about the jewel in the crown. This would actually enhance the jewel in the crown. You could say it would polish the jewel in the crown. These blocks are quite common in the area and fit into our planning scheme, and in my view, they fit into the character of Meetung. The blocks themselves will have strong building restrictions placed on them to ensure that they conform to the local character. The buildings will need to conform to rigid regulations about materials, colours, etc. And they'll have minimum sizes placed upon them that you can build buildings on those blocks. Landscaping is required by the owners within 12 months of occupation, And to ensure that's done, they'll need to provide a $2,000 bank guarantee that work is undertaken within 12 months for landscaping. Native trees will be encouraged. Now this will enhance the overall look of this development, and the trees planted will actually increase over the few that are removed in the process of doing the development. There's also restrictions on what fencing can be undertaken, and again this will enhance the development. The local community seem to agree to this project. We've received no objections to them whatsoever. From past experience, the people of Meetung are not backward in coming forward and telling us if we've made a mistake. This time, their silence has been deafening. There's been some comment within council about battle axe blocks. Well, personally, they're not my favourite. However, I must say they're very common throughout the Shire. And if you have a look at them in Eastwood Road, which is a similar development in size to Meetung, you'll see that they can be made quite attractive, and they are down there. There's a distinct shortage of land in Meetung. There's a distinct shortage of land throughout the Shire. We shouldn't be standing in the way of a good development, and this is a good development. So I would encourage councillors to vote against this motion, and I would like to put an alternate motion in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Does anybody else wish to speak for the motion? Does anybody else wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Van Diegel.
Are we speaking against the recommendation or the motion? Okay. I basically had written exactly what Trevor has just said. So thanks for, I guess saying what I was going to say, and I just second what Trevor says.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak for the motion? No. Then against the motion, I have Councillor Buckley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I also support Trevor and Kirsten. And I also think that potentially there may have been a missed opportunity. We as councillors made the decision to put this back to the officers and the proponent to discuss amendments to be made. And I don't know that was thoroughly investigated, such as, you know, the proposal of having a road or etc. or other things that may need to have been looked at. So maybe a missed opportunity, but I'm sure that supporting good planning applications, albeit maybe not as polished as some would like, but certainly quite respectable, I put my weight behind that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Does anybody else wish to speak either for or against the motion? Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Mayor Mendy. I wish to speak against the motion. I think that the fact that it was advertised widely in the neighbourhood and no one objected, compared to Storth's Rise, where there was 42 objections, says it all. And I think that having spoken to real estate agents, there is a real shortage of land in Meetung and across the Shire. And the more we procrastinate about some of these planning decisions, the more we exacerbate it. We need to set the standard.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Does anybody else wish to speak either for or against the motion? Councillor Reeves, you have the right of reply.
Yep, thanks, Mayor. Councillors, I really do ask you to consider this proposal. Once the deal is done, it's done for all time. I suspect that the lack of interest or objections is something I'd like to call COVID apathy. I think that that there's a lot of I was going to say disinterest, but perhaps that's not the right word. It's more that people are very inwardly focused at the moment and much less focused on these much bigger matters. And it's up to us to make those decisions around this. Look, battle axe blocks may be common in the region, but they're not common in Meetung. This is, again, really a premium product, premium part of the world, and I think we can do much better than battle axe blocks. And I know that the planners have had those conversations with the proponent, and it's just a sort of I think a second place option rather than the premium product of putting a road through there and doing it once and doing it properly. Councillors, think carefully about this. It won't solve the housing shortage, but it will maintain the premium product that Meetung and Kings Cove is if we do it once and do it right.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I will now put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Thank you. The motion is defeated. Councillor Stowe, you have an alternate motion that you would like to put?
Thank you, Mayor, I do. I won't read the motion out because it goes to some pages. However, you all have a copy of it and I think you're all familiar with it. And I would like to propose that motion to Council. I think it'd be an excellent outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. We're just waiting a second till we get this up on the screen.
Well, can I just say that it's been while you're waiting, it's been a motion that's been based on negotiations, amicable negotiations between...
Councillor Stowe, I'm just going to stop you there because you'll have a chance to speak to the motion in a second.
Very good.
So we have the motion up there on the screen now. So thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Allen, please. That's great.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mendy. Yes, I welcome the opportunity to second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stowe, you wish to speak to the motion?
Look, very briefly, I think we've covered it previously, but the motion's a compromise between ourselves and the proponent. I think it's a good compromise. I agree with Councillor Mark that Meetung's a premium market, but I think these are premium blocks. They're good sized blocks, they're well positioned, they're landscaped, they've got a lot going for them and there's a massive demand for them. So I think we're doing everyone a favour. It's a win-win situation with this.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Allen, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Mendy. I think Councillor Trevor has summed it up pretty well. The appetite for land is there and we need to satisfy it. As Councillor Mark said before, there is a great exodus of people coming out of particularly the Melbourne area looking for a more sedate rural life, and unless we've got the land supply there for those people, there's nowhere for them to come in East Gippsland Shire, and I think we need to welcome them.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Is the motion opposed? Thank you. Would you like to speak against the motion, Councillor Reeves?
Look, I won't waste everybody's time, and it'll be the opposite of what I was saying before, for the reasons I said before.
Yeah. Does anybody else wish to speak for the motion? Councillor White.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a lot about how things have changed rapidly in the last year and a half to do with COVID and people wanting to exit the metropolitan areas, but also, as we discussed earlier today, there are many occupations where you actually don't have to go to work anymore. You can work remotely and you can work from Kings Cove and you may have your head office in Brisbane. But the thing is that there are other reasons why people can now travel to this region, because it's such a beautiful place to come to, but they can actually bring their job with them without leaving their employment. And I think it's, these properties will be very popular, and I agree with Councillor Stowe that we should support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Does anybody else wish to speak either for or against the motion? I'm not sure that you've earned the right of... Oh, sorry, yes, Councillor Greeson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This alternate motion has 24 different points, and I actually think it's a reasonable compromise, but I still believe that it wouldn't make any difference. The development would still go ahead if we rejected the current proposal that's before us, or the proponent's proposal before us. It would cost the proponent a little bit more to build that road below. rather than having this very complicated process in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. If nobody else wishes to speak, either for or against, Councillor Stowe, you have the right of reply.
No, thank you, Mayor. I've said enough.
Thank you. Then I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And against? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 4 on our agenda this evening is for councillor and delegate reports. Now, I think we're up to going around this way around the table. Is that right? Councillor Crook, would you like to present your report, please?
You're the Mayor, Mrs Mayor, so certainly. Look, it's been a bit quiet, I guess, in the engagement front at least. COVID restrictions have made meetings a bit hard, at least face-to-face. But I did have the privilege of attending the Australian Coastal Council's meeting earlier this week. There are a number of items discussed there that have implications for our Shire, but probably the most significant related to an amendment to some Victorian legislation, Amendment VC 171, which was gazetted last month, specifically to strengthen the planning scheme provisions to plan and mitigate against coastal hazards and risk and to protect coastal environmental values. The amendment makes significant changes to the Victorian planning provisions to align with the recently introduced state government legislation on policy to do with coastal hazards, including the Marine and Coastal Act of 2018 and the Marine and Coast Policy of 2020. This creates a number of changes to land subject to the inundation overlay and also the erosion management overlay, which now require consideration of coastal inundation and erosion under those overlays, resulting from a warming climate. The Minister for Planning has previously approved planning scheme amendments where those two overlays have been applied to coastal land at risk of flooding and erosion, but this extends those requirements to the entirety of the planning scheme. So the amendment now requires planners to plan for sea level rise of not less than 0.8 of a metre by 2100 by deleting the outdated strategy under the previous plan of sea level rise of 0.2 metres by 2040. And look, as far as I understand it, this is something that we here at the East Gippsland Shire have already largely adopted. So this simply formalises that process as part of our ongoing work to mitigate and adapt to a changing climate. It's probably the most significant thing that I've been involved in recent times, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Van de Gel.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing to report the last 3 weeks.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Mayor Mendy. In the last little while, I had the privilege of attending the initial Economic Development Committee's meetings, which I've got to say that I was very impressed with the participation of both of those committees, and I think, and I hope, and I trust that at the end of this process they're going to produce a very, very good strategy as we move forward through the rest of this term. And similarly, last week, I think it was, I'm losing track of time, but I think it was last week, I attended the Orbost Transition Forum, which had speakers from numerous places, and it was a very, very informative event. But what worries me is that it needs to translate into positive results, not only for Orbost, but for the other towns and settlements that are affected by the transition out of the timber industry. So fine words are good, but we really need strong results out of that transition committee. But apart from that, I have nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor White, please.
Thank you, earlier today, much earlier today. I attended along with others, in fact most councillors that came in for our Special Audit and Risk Committee meeting today, which by the time this meeting's finished it's going to have been a very long day. There also was, last week we had an Agricultural Sector Advisory Committee meeting, which was well attended, and the feature of that was an address by the EPA, because at the previous meeting there was concern around new rules and regulations that had come into effect on the 1st of July, industrial waste and what was categorised as industrial waste. So those people that use, say, litter from poultry sheds and things like that were a little concerned that this being called industrial waste might affect their businesses because they use that product. So it was a welcome address from the EPA, because we'd all were very concerned about what the implications might be, but it's business as usual. So there was great relief there that you know, they're not enacting any other restrictions on it. It is business as usual, so everyone was quite happy. Now, another meeting that was that I was involved in was just hooking up with some officers on a Teams meeting or whatever we do on the computer, and around safety aspects in the little township of Lindenow South. And that was a really great meeting, because although we have resolved the speed limit issues to get some actual speed limits in the town, this was around a safe access for the children to get to school, and we are working and resolving to put some form of off the road, i.e. a gravel path or something, so as these kids can get safely to school without you know, meeting a car, or a car meeting them walking up the middle of the road pushing their push bikes. So this will be a great outcome for that little community, which has grown and grown and grown the last decade or so. So that was also something that was really important to me, and I'm glad that the officers have taken that on board, and I hope to get a report back soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Greason, please.
Thank you. I attended 3 events. The first one was the Victorian Local Government Association's meeting about Women's Charter. This was hosted by Mornington Shire. It was a really interesting session with some excellent presentations about gender equity and about how the impact of resisting it undermines democracy and restricts diversity and flexibility, and the fact that women's participation increases trust. Every council is a signatory to the Women's Charter now and must meet the requirements of the new Gender Equity Act, or Equality Act, actually. So that was one. I also attended the Victorian Local Government Grants Commission meeting at the end of August, which was about general purpose grants and local roads grants. But there was some discussion about the impending housing crisis, as houses are being bought up at a great rate throughout rural Victoria, and often not lived in and not put on the rental market, but are being converted to short-term accommodation, which is creating a real housing shortage. So there was some interesting discussion around what some of the councils are looking at doing about that. And we were given information about how the allocation of funding to each council happens, and the model used for funding per head of population, and I just felt it is something that we should look at. You know, is it equitable? Is it okay for us? The third meeting I went to was on Sunday in Orbost, at the Orbost Exhibition Centre, which is a absolutely wonderful centre, and I've joined up now as a member. But it was a presentation by Professor Phil Zylstra, who is a fire behaviour scientist, and he's worked in the fire management and remote area firefighting for a very long time. He talks about, he asked the question, are planned burns keeping us safe? So he talked about prescribed burning being the main tool used by land management agencies to reduce the risk and impact of wildfires. but he believes that the evidence for its effectiveness is actually quite weak. He talks about the fact that fire does have the effect of initiating dense regrowth, which thins after many years. So in fact, he believes that burning reduces fire risk for the first few years after a fire by clearing the understory and creating bare ground, but then greatly increases the risk for decades after this. So it was a really interesting presentation of his theory and something to look at and think about, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Stowe, please.
Mayor, I really have nothing to report during these COVID lockdown times. The most exciting thing that's happened to me in the last 3 weeks is buying some Kellogg's cornflakes at the supermarket.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Reeves, please.
Councillor Stowe, was that the supermarket that you opened? Was that the supermarket that you opened?
Like the ABC, I would prefer not to mention brands or names, but it was Woolworths.
Very diplomatic. Councillors, it's been very quiet for me too, and I was at the Boston District quarterly conversation recently, as well as Councillor Allen and Councillor Uri, the Mayor. And look, it's a very interesting place that. I tend to agree with you, Councillor Allen, around the next step being the action outcome. But look, the process that they're going through, the smart specialisation process, is really fascinating, and I think it is the way to go. What I'm looking forward to now is Nowa and Swifts Creek also embarking on this process ahead as well, and seeing how Orbost has embraced it and engaged. Well, there were 60 people online that night, so I think it sort of augurs well for our community to use this process, and I'm glad that we as a Shire are acting as the sort of lead agencies for the next stage for Nowa and Swifts Creek.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Buckley, do you have a councillor's report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. I've had a really busy time. I've made best use of the online medium that's available to us now, and I've done several courses, and I've still got some more MAV training in front of me. I attended a leadership course and also a wellbeing and resilience course, a social media training course as well, and finally bullying and harassment, which I encourage all councillors to go to that particular one, as it's become systemic in local governance, and that was very poignant and very obvious by that presentation. And indeed, there is now an inquiry underway that has been launched by the Minister to look into that sort of behaviour, which none of us should accept or engage with. So that was that. But in regards to the final part of my report, I just wanted to share with you a little bit of information from Rural Councils Victoria. We had a presentation by VPA, the Victorian Planning Authority, and I just thought, in regards to some of our earlier discussions, it's a very good topic about getting some positive vision that we can and we shall in these coming years be able to deal with planning in positive ways. And the VPA are extending their hand to local governance by invitation, that they would be happy to come in, and because their role specifically is to assist local government and to be able to deliver. And what they do is by using land and the planning, infrastructure coordination, and they streamline and unlock growth in designated areas. So I think that was very interesting, and what their core objectives are is to develop a strategic framework, including criteria, to enable the VPA to identify and prioritise work programs in high growth regional areas and centres, and to develop programs which would be led by the VPA as a planning authority on invitation from councils. What those objectives could be for us is that they can unlock an at-scale zoned land supply and development in Victoria's regions experiencing growth pressure, which we are indeed one of those councils. They'll help to prepare master plans to support development in strategic precinct areas and/or sites, support planning projects that assist in bushfire recovery or other emergency response initiatives, and finally support planning projects that respond to COVID-relating housing and employment growth. So I think the VPA could be a very good partner to help ease the burden that we face in our planning department. So that's some good news, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Like other councillors, I haven't had very many community engagements either, sadly. But I have had a number of meetings and so on as part of representing East Gippsland Shire Council since the last meeting. I wanted to mention briefly a group that I've been part of this year, actually not for very long. There are only 4 meetings involved in this little group. That's the Local Government Mayoral Advisory Panel, which I was appointed to at the end of last year. And we've now had our 4th and final meeting with the Minister. Actually, the last meeting wasn't with the Minister, he was unwell. So Minister Mary-Ann Thomas, whom we're getting to know quite well, Minister for Agriculture and Regional Development, has taken over in the interim. But the 4 meetings have been really very interesting in hearing things from a mayoral perspective from a number of different local government areas across the whole state. The last one, we had presentations from a number of the mayors around improving the culture of council, and that was a project that Councillor Buckley referred to, trying to improve the culture in councils, and that will be running until early next year, and all councillors will have an opportunity to have input into that project, I believe. We also had presentations about regional housing issues, accountability and transparency reforms, and single-use plastics and reducing those. In relation to that group also, I just wanted to report that along with the Mayor of Mornington Shire Council, I made a presentation to the Minister, although, as I say, he wasn't well, so it was to his staff on the 30th of August, in relation to the environmental effects statement advocacy that this council has agreed to take on to try and seek a review to that process and make it fairer for local governments and for community to participate in. So I think that was quite well received, that presentation. And then I just wanted to mention a few things about COVID, because it's obviously something that we're all involved with. Very pleased that, along with the CEO, we met with the CEO of Bensdale Regional Health and the Primary Health Unit just recently about the vaccine rollout in East Gippsland. And I'm pleased that council is sort of positioning itself not as we're not a major deliverer of vaccine. In fact, we don't deliver vaccines, but it's important, I think, for us to work with these other organisations to find out what our role can be in encouraging people to get vaccines. So there are a number of actions coming out of that, which I'm pleased that we'll be undertaking. There was a new Border Representatives Reference Group, which is chaired by the Minister, Mary-Ann Thomas, had their 2nd meeting just the other day. So that's just a monthly meeting in which we receive updates about cross-border issues, which East Gippsland Shire is obviously very involved in with our residents. And we also advocated for some East Gippsland residents who are stuck in parts of New South Wales, who are seeking equality of eligibility for applying to return home. So in difficult situation there. Just to say also that I was involved in an MAV training session, and actually Councillor Van Diggle was also around meeting procedure. The MAV provides some fantastic training opportunities for councillors. And just on another note of advocacy, we did write to the Premier on Monday the 6th of September. So this councillor group, thought that it was important to relay some of the stories they were hearing about the difficulties that the ongoing COVID lockdown was causing for different communities in East Gippsland. So that letter went to the Premier on the 6th of September. And of course, we're now enjoying some easing of restrictions, and I hope that might continue, and that our residents, will be enjoying those eased restrictions for the time being at least. Thank you. I will submit my written report, and that will be provided with the minutes of this meeting. We'll go on to item 5 on our agenda, which is for officer reports, and 5.1 is for assets and environment, and we have the General Manager of Assets and Environment, Ms Weigel, to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The report before Councillors this evening is for the extension of an existing maintenance contract for the Raymond Island Ferry. As we all know, the Raymond Island Ferry is a specialised service and a specialised bit of equipment, and therefore we outsource the maintenance of the ferry. We've broken the contract into 5 separable portions, which were, and the contract was awarded in 2018 to 4 separate companies to perform those 5 functions. The contract had the ability to be extended for up to another 24 months at the sole discretion of council. So the report before you this evening is to make recommendations for the extension of some of those contract components. 3 of the contractors we're recommending are extended for the full 24 months. The other contractor, due to their requests, we're recommending is extended till December. Happy to take any questions on the contract through the Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms Weigel. Councillors, are there any questions? If not, there is an officer recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Reeves. You'd like to move the recommendation? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Allen. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Reeves?
Very briefly, Mayor and Councillors. The Raymond Island Ferry is an option. It's an essential service. We need to keep it running and keep the maintenance up to it. And I'm very fond of it. It's actually a lovely element of and feature of our Shire, and I urge everybody to go and have a ride on it if you haven't, and to use that free ferry pass that you got with your rates as well.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor Mendy. I think Councillor Reeves summed it up pretty well.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed? Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? If not, I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 5.1.2 is for major culvert repairs, and we have Ms Weigel also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, the report before you this evening is to award a contract for major culvert repairs throughout the Shire, and it is supported by a confidential attachment that details the tender evaluation process that supports the recommendation before you this evening. With almost 3,000 kilometres of road network, culverts play an important part of our road network. And we have over 130 major culverts. These culverts are inspected regularly and identified for repair and replacement. The contract that we are seeking to award this evening will actually repair 44 culverts in various locations throughout the Shire, and I think given the wet weather we've had recently, we can all appreciate how important culverts are to the functioning of our road network. As I said, there is a confidential attachment that details the recommendation and the working of the assessment of the tenders, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Weigel. Councillors, are there any questions? I see none. There is then an officer recommendation in front of you. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Cook. You'd like to move the recommendation? Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greason. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Crook?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a discussion with a road engineer not long ago, and they said to me that there were three essential components to building and maintaining roads, and those three essential components were drainage, drainage, and drainage. So obviously this motion secures a contract to deliver services to service a major component of our road network, being the culverts. So I have no hesitation in recommending it.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed? If not, I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Got a bit out of order there. Oh, would you? Would you like to? Sorry, I got out of order. Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 5.2 on our agenda around bushfire recovery. We have the General Manager of Bushfire Recovery online. Item 5.2.1 is the South Bairnsdale Industrial Estate Declaration of a Special Charge Scheme. We have Mr McConnell to speak to this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. You have before you a report which recommends that you formally commence the Special Charge Scheme to raise funds to contribute to the cost of upgrades of water supply infrastructure in the Bairnsdale South Industrial Estate. The limitations in water supply infrastructure in Bairnsdale South, in the Bairnsdale South Industrial Estate are long-standing, and it's been an issue that has been raised by landholders in that area for some time, because it's an impediment to further development of the areas, because buildings over a certain size trigger the need for additional firefighting infrastructure, firefighting water infrastructure, which is then needs to be installed at the cost of the landholders. So there is a significant impediment there, and this project aims to address that, and in doing so, encourage and support further economic development in this important industrial estate in East Gippsland. Importantly, the Special Charge Scheme is only one of several contributions to the funding of this project. So we have $1.1 million worth of work that's already been underway with East Gippsland Water. There is a $500,000 contribution from RDV, and there's an additional $400,000 that's proposed to be allocated from council funds. So the request for $400,000 to be contributed by landholders as part of this Special Charge Scheme needs to be seen in the context of this co-investment and the important benefits that it will deliver to individual landholders as well as to the broader community through economic development. Again, importantly, the Special Charge Scheme contribution proposed to be requested of individual landholders is much less, significantly less, than the cost of any additional infrastructure should a landholder wish to build a building in excess of 500 square metres. Landholders were consulted in late 2020, early 2021, and this revealed general support for the proposal and also, importantly, some feedback which has led to refinements in the proposed scheme. Subject to your decision tonight, a period of formal consultation will commence, during which affected landholders will have the opportunity to make a further submission. You have a recommendation before you, but I would like to take this opportunity to make one minor change to the officer recommendation, replacing the words repaying a debt with the words defraying the expenses in the published recommendation. I believe the amended recommendation is on the screen in front of you for clarity. I'm available to take any questions through you, Mayor, and I also have Sharon Ragoose and Stephen Kleinitz available to assist in responding to any queries.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillors, you have questions of clarification? Councillor White, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Stuart, I have read, or I know we've come a long way in this journey, and finally we should see an outcome. And I'd just like to ask, and please, this is not to put pressure on you, but I ask, we have explored all the avenues that we can in order to get this to be the least possible cost to landholders at the moment. Is that correct?
Yeah. So as I outlined, and Councillor has sought and been successful in gaining significant grant funding to contribute to this project. And there is also a significant contribution from council funds to this project. And these things together significantly reduce the contribution that's being sought from landholders. And so I believe this is the best proposal that's been on the table to resolve this issue, given that people have been working on this for many years. So I believe this is the best opportunity the landholders in this region have had to resolve this issue and to really unlock the economic development potential of the Bairnsdale South Industrial Estate.
Thank you, Councillor White, for the question. Councillor Stowe, you have a question also?
Thank you, Mayor. Stuart, I note that the charge is going to be applied to the size of the block rather than the size of the building. Could you just explain the reasons for that, please?
Yes, so I'll ask Stephen Kleinitz to assist with this in a moment, but essentially the proposal relies on the benefit that can be made of the lot. So if it's a larger lot, it's about, if it's a larger lot, it has the potential to be developed in the future, and so that's what's reflected, not just what buildings are on it at present. But I'll ask Stephen whether if there's anything further he'd want to add to that response.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Stuart, your answer is in alignment with what the report says. It is around the potential benefit. Larger lots have a significantly a larger opportunity and a larger saving. The benefit in the case of the report is the savings that they will make through not having to install their own firefighting services. So a larger lot that has the potential to put a larger building or multiple buildings will have a larger benefit accrued.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. Councillor Stowe, you happy? Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other further questions, councillors? Councillor Van Diggel.
I did have the opportunity to quickly speak with the landowner today, who's claimed that they haven't actually been consulted about the proposal at all in the last 12 months. So I'm just curious to know if there is consensus across the landowners that this, I mean, I can see it's beneficial. Like you said, there's a big cost saving. But as far as I'm concerned, there hasn't been any communication, at least from this landowner, and they're really interested in knowing what the costs will be. So do you already have like a cost per property? Do you already know that, and have you liaised with the landowners?
So firstly, Councillor Van Diggel, certainly if there's someone who has particular concerns, I'd encourage you to pass on their details so that we can understand and speak with them directly, because each circumstance and each piece of land is a little bit different. Certainly, earlier in the year, we sought to write to the landowners it was late last year that we wrote to all landholders that are potentially affected by this scheme. So there are a number of possible scenarios in which it might be that this person is not affected by the scheme and so didn't get a letter, or there may be some other reason why they did not receive that letter. But again, following today, any decision made by council today triggers the next step in the process, and the next step in that process involves allowing landholders the opportunity to make a further submission. And so if, having received further advice around the implications for their property, someone is not satisfied, they can make a submission. Again, I might ask Stephen, because I believe within the appendices or attachments to this document is the detail about exactly which lots of land are included in the proposed scheme, and at this stage what the estimated cost for each of those pieces of land is.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. And just mentioning the consultation, we mailed out in November to all ratepayers on the estate. We also did a public notice at that time, and we held some consultation sessions where we met with landowners in December and January and February as well, giving them the opportunity to give us feedback. Within, and going to Stuart's other point about this report, within the report there are several attachments. One of the attachments does outline the potential costs to each individual landholder that we'll be looking to apply.
So I think Stephen was indicating that, yeah, the attachments indicate the lots that are in...
And some other considerations as well.
Sorry, Stephen, you just dropped out briefly there, but I think what that was indicating was that, yes, the attachments include identification of the lots that are included in the proposed scheme and the cost associated with each of those lots.
Thank you. Councillor Van Dickel, you happy? Thank you. Mr McConnell, do you have any idea when this issue first became known to council, and so how long this solution has been being developed by any chance?
So going back, it's more than a decade that the issue has been on the cards. So the issue is known before 2009. In response to the 2009 fires, there were some changes in the way in which some of the provisions were being administered, particularly by the CFA, which meant that it became a more significant constraint on development within this area. So this has been an issue for a decade or so, and there have been a number of attempts to try and resolve this issue. And so what's in front of us today, complete with the contributions from council and the contributions in terms of grant funding from RDV, is the best opportunity we've had to seek resolution of this long-standing issue.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillors, if there are no further questions, do I have a motion, please? There is an officer recommendation in front of you. Councillor Stowe, you have a motion. Councillor Crook, you'd like to second that? Would you like to speak to the motion, please, Councillor Stowe?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Look, I'd like to congratulate the staff on this outcome. It's been a very good outcome and a very fair outcome. The way that they've gone and assessed each individual block, if individual owners had to provide their own water, their own tanks, they're looking something in the order of $150,000 to $200,000, and then they've got to find room on the block for the tank, which prohibits further expansion. On average, I think my calculations are looking at about $2,000 to $3,000 for this surcharge, and I think that's very fair. It's also been well supported by the business people. They've looked forward to a resolution of this, and I believe that they have embraced the resolution that their staff have come up with.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. And I just wanted to make it clear that you are moving the motion with the slightly amended wording that's on the screen.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
Certainly, just to concur with what Councillor Stowe said there. Look, I've met with several of the businesses up in that district, and this initiative will certainly provide for their needs. This was going to impose a really significant cost, one that many of those businesses would have struggled to meet otherwise. It will see them be able to comply with the new fire regulations at minimal cost. It's good use of council money because it will provide a huge multiplier in terms of both economic activity and local jobs. I note here in the report that most of the businesses will incur a cost somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000, and otherwise they will be looking at a cost between $50,000 and $150,000. The largest single financial contribution will come from a block that is in excess of 60,000 square metres, and they will contribute $17,000 under this scheme. So I think it's a good initiative, and I recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Is the motion opposed? If not, would anyone else like to speak either for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Reeves.
I'm happy to speak for it. Councillors, this is my third term. It's the third term that we've been dealing with Bairnsdale South Industrial Estate. and it's really wonderful to get to this stage, to have East Gippsland Water along on board and providing such a significant contribution, both in kind and on the ground and under the ground, as well as RDV and East Gippsland Shire contributing to this. It's been an impediment to the development of our town, and this really unlocks that potential.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Does anybody else wish to speak, either for or against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, the motion is carried. Item 5.3.1 on our agenda this evening is for the draft annual financial statements 2020 to 2021 and the draft performance statement 2020 to 2021. And we have the General Manager of Business Excellence, Mr. Peter Canizzaro, to present this item, please. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled Draft Annual Financial Statements 2020/21 and Draft Performance Statement 2020/21, which is seeking Council's in principle approval to the 2021 Annual Financial Statements and Performance Statement. The report also seeks Council's appointment of 2 councillors to sign the 2021 Annual Financial Statements and Performance Statement in its final form. The key points of the report, councillors, for you to consider tonight. Firstly, councillors are required to produce an annual report within 3 months of the end of the financial year, and the annual report also includes audited financial statements and performance statements. Given the timing of the audit process, provisions exist within the Local Government Act 1989 for councils to adopt the financial statements and the performance statement in principle before submission to the Auditor General. Council also must appoint 2 councillors, as I mentioned earlier, to certify the financial statements and the performance statement in their form once the Auditor General has advised that this can be done. Also, the financial statements and the performance statements were presented to the Audit and Risk Committee at a meeting held earlier today. The Audit and Risk Committee recommended the Council adopt the financial statements and performance statement in accordance with the recommendations contained within the report before you tonight. However, to note that for recommendations 2 and 3 within the report, Council was advised on the 13th of September, so yesterday, that VAGO, the Victorian Auditor General's Office, has given clearance for the signing. I present the report for you tonight, councillors. I also have Liz Collins, Manager of Finance, with me tonight to answer any technical questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canizzaro. Councillors, are there any questions, please? We've had a look at these documents in our Audit and Risk meeting earlier today, but there are no further questions. If not, then there is a recommendation in front of you, councillors. Do I have a motion? Councillor White, you'd like to move the motion? I wonder if you can move that. And would you like to, we need 2 councillors. We need the names of those councillors now? Probably.
Probably need a second first. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor White, I'm not sure of the process here because we have discussed this and we did propose 2 councillors who are members of the Audit and Risk Committee certify the annual financial statements and the performance statements in their final form. So, Councillor White...
Do you need a motion to recommend 2 councillors? Is that what happens here?
I think you could...
I think, John, you could probably make the recommendation.
You could propose yourself and Councillor Allen to be the 2 councillors. Would you
I'm
like
happy to second that too.
That would be the motion, then?
Thank you, Mayor. All right, well, before I speak to the motion, I'll perhaps say that during discussions earlier today that Councillor Allen and myself had been recommended to be the signatories on this document, and we're happy to accept that.
Great.
So what I'd like to say then in regards to the motion is that...
I'll give you an opportunity to speak to the motion in a second. So you've proposed that motion with yourself and Councillor Allen. You're happy to second that motion, Councillor Reeves? Okay, please speak to the motion, Councillor White.
Thank you. Well, it's one of those things in terms of dates were spoken about here, and isn't it terrific that it's all come together all within a few days. We've been given the tick of approval from Vago, and Ms Collins has actually brought a really good set of numbers to the table, and because it's all happened right here and right now, I'm happy to sign it, because I would have thought, gee, what am I signing here? I hope there's no, there's nothing hidden in the closet, because we actually become responsible for, as signatories, we become responsible for that document. But it's all, what would you call it, squeaky clean. It's all ticked off, and happy to do so.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Reeves, would you like to speak to the motion?
Absolutely, and very comfortable to have our Councillor White and Councillor Allen as representatives on the Audit Committee who've been through the process to have their signatures on there, and you're not left out on the limb. You're signing on behalf of everyone, so we're all there with you. We float and sink together, but I'd like to acknowledge the work of Ms Collins and her team, and the CEO and the whole team who are responsible for what happens in the financial operations of our Shire. It's the bottom line. We can't do what we want to do if we can't pay our bills if and when they fall due, and this shows that we can, and we're in good hands. It's a complex organisation, $130 million worth. It's no small chunk of cash, so well done, officers.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Is the motion opposed? Does anybody else wish to speak either for or against the motion? Councillor Allen, you'd like to speak for the motion?
Thanks, Mayor Mendy. I'd just like to pass on my gratitude and congratulations to Liz and her team for the job they've done. As Justin Brooke, the auditor, said, it's a very, very rare occasion that there's 4 minor items that come out in an audit, and that was all we had. And I think, you know, it's a very, very, very good job that you've done and continue to do, and certainly makes our job on the Audit and Risk Committee very, very much easier. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Allen. Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? Yes, Councillor Crook.
Yes, thanks. Just to concur with what the others have said, I absolutely agree. It's testament to the staff's good work. And for the benefit of the public, I believe that the document in its entirety will be circulated with the minutes. So the details will be there for everybody to see.
Thank you. And we do have that motion up on the screen for those watching at home. Does anybody else wish to speak either for or against the motion? If not, I put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 5.3.2 is the provision of banking and associated services, and we have Mr Cannizzaro again to present this one. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, the purpose of this report, the provision of banking and associated services, contract extension, is to seek Council's approval to exercise its option within that contract for a further period of 3 years to end the 21st of September 2024. Just a bit of background, the contract commenced on the 22nd of September 2016 with an initial 5-year term, scheduled to end on the 21st of September 2021. The contract was awarded for a fixed term period of 5 years with the option solely exercisable by Council for that further 3 years. The contract is a schedule of rates contract for banking and associated services, which includes things like transactional banking and collection services for the East Gippsland Shire Council. It Also provides our customers with enhanced, easy-to-use systems for making payments to council, as well as streamlining processes for council staff with respect to facilitation of payments, receipt of payments, reconciliations and the like. So some value added for our finance staff. Tonight also with me is Liz Collins, Manager of Finance, who is here to respond to any questions of a technical nature. I present the report, councillors, to you tonight along with its recommendations.
Thank you, Mr Cannizzaro. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Stowe, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Liz, could I ask you, this is a significant expense to the Shire. I think it's in the order of $600,000 in banking fees over the next 3 years. Are we getting good service, and do you believe this is a good deal for us?
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. In terms of the next 3 years, it's probably about $130,000 a year. So over the first 5, it was probably a bit over 600,000. And in terms of the service that we've been provided by NAB, I would say we're very satisfied with the service, with their response time, and also they're proactive in putting forward improvements to the systems that certainly enhance customer service, but also the internal services that we use with that service. So we certainly have been very satisfied with the service that NAB have provided over the last 5 years.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Any further questions, councillors? If not, there is an officer recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Greason, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Allen. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Greason?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm supporting this recommendation in order to ensure continuity of financial business operating management transactions. However, I would like to think that the council will review its banking contracts in the future. It's a lot of money, and it needs that we bank, and it needs to be with institutions that have similar values to those of our community vision and our council plan. Issues like climate change, renewable energy resources, sustainable industries and environment, those sorts of issues we need to take into account, I think. And also our banking, I believe, should be with institutions that give back to our community, and we do have those options out there. So I would like to consider that I would like to think that we will be considering these issues in the future, but I support the motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Allen, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor Mendy. Look, in any business, your relationship with your bank is vital. And as we've heard from Liz before, our relationship with NAB has been very, very good. And I think that it's important that when you've got a good relationship, that you build on it.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Is the motion opposed? Does anybody else wish to speak, either for or against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 5.3.3 on our agenda is for the instrument of appointment and authorisation and instrument of subdelegation. This is with Mr Cannizzaro as well, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation and Instrument of Subdelegation, which is a report to appoint council staff as authorised officers under the Environment Protection Act 2017 and the Planning and Environment Act 1987, and to establish delegations for council staff under the Environment Protection Act 2017. The key points, councillors, on this report for you to consider are the provisions of the Environment Protection Act 2017 commenced on 1st July 2021 following the repeal of the Environment Protection Act 1970. This report is establishing a new instrument of delegation for the Environment Protection Act 2017 for officers to undertake the functions, duties and powers of council. The Environment Protection Act requires that any person fulfilling the nominated position at council in the delegation is an authorised officer. The report ensures council complies with this requirement by appointing the authorised officers. Both these instruments can only be made by council in line with the delegation provided to it by the Environment Protection Authority, my apologies, on the 4th of July 2017. The instruments will enable the community laws, health officers and waste officers to act on behalf of the council and enforce provisions under that delegation from the EPA. This report is also seeking the appointment and authorisation of newly appointed Manager of Planning, Martin Richardson, under the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Council can appoint authorised officers under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 to act on behalf of council in certain circumstances and to enforce provisions within that Act. In addition, the report is seeking to revoke appointments of 4 authorised officers who are no longer at council. Also today with me is Manager Governance Bojane da Costa, who's available to respond to any of the technical questions with regard to this report. The report and recommendations is presented to you tonight, councillors, for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Cannizzaro. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification? No questions? There is an officer recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion, councillors? Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Seconded, Councillor Crook. Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Reeves?
Councillors, it's important but procedural that this matter is dealt with, so we just need to move it on.
Thank you. Councillor Crook, you wish to speak to the motion? No. Is the motion opposed? Does anyone wish to speak either for or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 5.3.4 is the draft procurement policy. Once again, Mr Cannizzaro, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is the report titled Draft Procurement Policy, which is seeking to adopt the new procurement policy in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020. The key points of the report for you to consider tonight, councillors, is that in accordance with the new Local Government Act 2020, council is required to prepare and adopt a new procurement policy prior to the 1st of January 2022. The procurement policy is required to specify principles, processes and procedures applying in respect to the purchase of goods and services by the council, including for the carrying out of works, whilst also seeking to promote open and fair competition and provide value for money. The Local Government Act 2020 removes much of the rigidity that was contained in the old Local Government Act 1989, such as removing provisions for ministerial exemptions and delegated market engagement thresholds, in favour of a more principle-based approach in allowing councils to approach procurements more flexibly, however with the intent that it applies the key principles of value for money, open and fair competition, accountability, risk management, probity and transparency and sustainable and social procurement objectives. This new draft procurement policy adopts and incorporates these principles into council's procurement activities. The revised draft policy has been developed to be strategic in nature, utilising the opportunities presented by the new Act, whilst ensuring compliance with the required principles. This allows council to approach procurement in a manner that serves the organisation's objectives, but also the community in an efficient and effective manner, whilst ensuring that transparent and accountable practices still underpin the key principles and framework of the Act. Tonight with me is Manager Governance Bojane da Costa, who's available to respond to any technical questions you may have, councillors. The report and recommendations is presented to you tonight for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Cannizzaro. Councillors, are there any questions? No questions? Then there is an officer's recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Crook. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greason. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Crook?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I think this is obviously a very important policy before us this evening. We receive a large amount of money and deliver a large amount of services, and this policy governs how we engage contractors to help us deliver those services, governs our procurement. Under the Local Government Act, the new Local Government Act, this new policy really, I think, allows for greater flexibility. And it does that in a number of ways, but for example, it gives us the ability to adjust evaluation criteria prior to releasing a particular tender to the market. So we're now able to place greater emphasis on particular objectives, whether they be sustainability or the procurement of local services that employ local people and such things. So I think this is a good step forward and I recommend it.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. I've forgotten who seconded the motion. Councillor Greason. Goodness me, thank you. Pay attention. Do you wish to speak to the motion? Thank you.
I think it's a very well-written policy, and it does make the requirements of a tendering process very clear. So I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Is the motion opposed? Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. Oh, Councillor Buckley, are you voting for the motion? Sorry, Councillor Buckley, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I just have one concern in regards to this about where it puts councillors. It was discussed earlier when determining what process they're able to vote or what confinements there are in regards to voting for or against the tender process. So I just wanted to flag my concern in regards to that.
So, Councillor Buckley, is that a point of clarification before we vote on the motion?
It's probably more a statement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, councillors, I'm now going to put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 5.4 on our agenda. We have place and community planning permit application for Slip Road foreshore redevelopment, and we have the Acting General Manager of Place and Community, Mr. Wayne, to present this. Thank you, Mr. Wayne.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report seeking endorsement to grant the planning permit to facilitate the Slip Road Paynesville foreshore reserve upgrades. The key points of the report for Council to consider are that this is a council-led project. For Council to act for determination in accordance with Council's planning permit application delegations policy, as the project has a development cost in excess of $5 million. The application was exempt from public notice, however there has been significant community engagement led by the projects team. The proposed development includes redevelopment of the boat ramp, development of a new ramp, reconstruction of the seawall and creation of footpaths along the shore. New jetties will also be created and the existing facilities will be improved upon the improved local flood mitigation. The principal planning considerations are the loss of native vegetation and the alteration of the surface levels in the flood-prone land, with the proposal receiving support from DELP and the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority respectively. This project will have a lasting benefit for the region. The proposal, when considered on its planning merits, is consistent with the East Gippsland planning scheme and is therefore supported for the grant of a planning permit. Also present this evening is Martin Richardson, Council's Manager of Planning, who can answer any technical questions related to the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wayne. Councillors, are there any questions, please? Councillor Crook first and then Councillor Reeves. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. It's maybe a question for you, Chris, or possibly you, Martin. I noticed in the reports here there were some concerns around inundation, and initially there was a proposal to use a considerable amount of fill, but the Catchment Management Authority wasn't very happy with that because under the 1 in 100 year flood overlay, a majority of the site's actually underwater. I was just wondering if you could outline for us how those concerns were addressed.
Thanks, Councillor Cook. Yes, you're right. The land is flood prone, and in fact, as we speak, a fair bit of it is underwater due to our westerlies and a bit of rain. So the land subject to inundation overlay does cover a significant portion of the site, and there were a number of design issues considered in the project to deal with that. In the end, a moderation of the amount of fill required and revised design in relation to seawall heights have satisfied the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority. It's also worth bearing in mind that, of course, there are no habitable buildings or structures required for this land, so risks to personal safety are obviously minimised. So in the end, the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority is happy with the design outcome, and that design will help to limit flooding, but won't pass on any flooding implications to other lands. So in the end, a good result and approved and supported by the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority.
Thank you, Martin. I had some other community concerns around the level of car parking. There was a concern that there wasn't going to be enough car parking allocated. I'm just wondering what sort of modelling of the usage rates that we've had done, or how that particular concern is being addressed.
I'm happy to pass to the projects team if required, but my understanding is that, yes, this is a very heavily used boat and trailer or trailer car parking area, particularly in the summer. In terms of the overall outcome for car parking, the original the site as it stands has quite informal car parking and accommodates about 90 cars and trailers, boat trailers. The final design actually accommodates about 90 cars and trailers and also has a small overflow area as well. So there was a lot of discussion both with recreational boaters and with the maritime industry operators in Slip Road opposite, reaching an agreement about a kind of an optimum outcome for car parking, but also enabling access for larger vessels on trailers. So in the end, the car and trailer parking provided is about similar to what is currently available, but in a much better format, designed and built to much better construction standard, and it will cope with about the same demand for recreational boating activity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Reeves, you had a question?
I did. Thanks, Mandy. Mr Richardson, we are both the applicant and the responsible authority in this case, which is not unusual, but I'm just wondering how that matter is dealt with in terms of separation of interests for us as a council.
I think without fear or favour is the term, Councillor Reeves. So there's a clear separation of responsibilities and functions between the planning department in terms of statutory planning approvals and our assets and environment team in terms of designing and developing projects. The assets and environment team and the project unit within that lodges an application as would any other applicant, and the planning staff assess and recommend decisions on that application as they would with any other applicant, private or public. There's no collusion, there's no advice giving that we wouldn't give to any other applicant, and the outcome that we ensure is that the decision made by council stands up on its own two legs, legally speaking, and as I said, essentially applications lodged on behalf of council are dealt with by the planning department as are any other applications through the statutory process.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Any further questions, councillors? No further questions? Then you have a officer's recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion, please? Thank you, Councillor White. Oh, really? Okay. So, Councillor White, are you happy to move the motion, and we'll ask Councillor Buckley if she's happy to second the motion?
Could I perhaps ask Councillor Buckley, was she first because I wasn't looking either.
Councillor
No,
Buckley.
it's okay, John. I'm happy for you to move the motion and I'll
Thanks,
second it.
Councillor White. Go ahead.
All right then.
You're happy to move the motion. Councillor Buckley is seconding. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor White?
As many of us who've lived in the area for some time, that area of Paynesville is, well, it's council managed, but it's not managed. It's an area that that's been crying out for some beautification for decades, and you know, we're fortunate that we've managed to get funding for this, and it's probably taken a long time, and perhaps as a result maybe of a couple of disasters to the whole region to help us get funding. But it's going to be amazing, and as Mr. Richardson said, there will still be the available parking, only you'll be parking in spaces that have got beautification around them, and with a new seawall and the ramp, etc. I can't wait to see this start and be completed, because it's just going to be, you know, turn an area that people sort of would drive down the street and get to there and turn around and go, oh, and drive back out again. So this will be actually something that will attract people to the area, and yeah, I'm really excited about the project. I'm thankful to the staff for getting it up and going.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Certainly, councillors. I think we can all agree that that Paynesville's one of those destinations that Melbourneites, you know, flock to, and it's very important for the economy that we have these sorts of destinations, and for safety. So I fully recommend this motion, and also I look forward to having a boat ramp, the proposal for the Dartmouth Dam boat ramp, which would offer the same sort of, you know, positive economy bonus that these sort of boat ramps and access places have. They become the gems of for fishermen. You know, we love our anglers, don't we, Councillor Stowe? And I think that that we certainly need to put our weight behind these sorts of projects. So I look forward to seeing something like this similar boat ramp proposal for up here in the high country. But well done, the rest, all the officers, and I look forward to seeing, for cutting the ribbon, so to speak. So I think we've got a really good proposal in front of us, councillors. Thank you.
Very good. Is the motion opposed? Would anyone else like to speak either for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Reeves.
Councillors, McMillan Strait is one of the, if not the busiest recreational boating stretch of water in Victoria. It's an absolute destination. What's being proposed is fitting for this particular location, there's no doubt about it. And it's great. It's really fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Anybody else wish to speak? If not, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. Mr. CEO, we don't have any urgent or other business?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Then we are up to item 7 on our agenda, and that is for confidential business. Do I have a motion, please, to move us into camera? Councillor Allen, thank you. And seconded, Councillor Reeves. You don't wish to speak to the motion. Is the motion opposed? No, I'll put the motion. Beg your pardon? Oh, we need to read it. Yep. Do you have the script there in front of you, Councillor Allen? So if I read it out as a recommendation and you see if you agree with it. So, councillors, we now have confidential items to discuss, and we need to move that the meeting is closed pursuant to section of 66(5) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider confidential information as defined in section 3(1) of the Act as being information that contains private commercial information which, if released, would unreasonably expose the businesses, commercial or financial undertaking to disadvantage. Is that right? Oh, good. Do you move that motion, Councillor?
Thank you very much, Mayor Mendy. I do move that motion and thank you for your assistance.
That's a pleasure. Councillor Rees. Seconding the motion. Is the motion opposed? No. If not, I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is